Denis Buranov from Positive Technologies. Alexei Volkov, VKontakte. Vitaly Lutikov, Federal Service for Technical and Expert Control. MA Yuri Maximov. I'll try today to run this discussion in a way that will keep it more interesting and more fun to watch. I have this proposal to avoid long monologues, and maybe we can roll with the punches, take it as it goes, and have a very honest discussion of how we've been doing, because for 12 years, Positive Forum has been an interesting forum about practical security, and organizers have always wanted it to be a very hands-on, very down-to-earth kind of discussion. Now, in this world of military operations, attacks have become much more persistent. Just watch what's happening here in Russia and Ukraine. The Pandora's box has been flung open. It won't be different. And in order to live in this real world, we need to have an honest discussion of what is happening. And since it's a very practical forum, I suggest we start by discussing how much we really understand what's happening. Like, we know there are more leaks happening, there are more hacks happening, but then we approach the public and we tell them everything's fine, nothing to worry. And yes, I can understand why we're doing this, because with the military operation running, people are anxious. But are we lying to ourselves here? Do you think that we need to have a very honest discussion of what hacks are happening today? Was that a question? Yes. So do you think we need to engage each other in a very honest discussion of the kind of hacks that are happening? Or do we need to keep up the pretenses in order not to agitate people too much? Who would like to start? Is that me again? Yeah, come on, Maksut. Why not? Well, if we are at war, then telling each other that everything is fine if it's not the case would be a totally wrong thing to do, because otherwise, we won't be able to win this war. That's why I believe that honesty is a very important condition. Like, we need to recognize what the situation is and what our drawbacks are, and do our best to patch up the existing holes. Thank you so much, Maksut. Thank you, Maksut. Let me continue. Indeed, it is very important to realize that an adequate view of the world is extremely important under the current conditions. It's particularly so for organizations. It is extremely important both for CISO and for the business leaders to have an adequate understanding of what's happening, preferably data-driven and evidence-based. Now, as regards your particular question of whether we need to talk in public about security incidents or logs, actually depends on circumstance. It could be your PR policy or the regulatory requirements. So if you require the help of the professional community, that certainly makes a lot of sense to share the information or summon help. Inside the organization, for sure, you need to always have a very clear picture of what's happening. You need metrics, you need some practical proof of how protected you are, and you need to maintain that level of protection that, gives you the kind of risk you can live with. So, in other words, you should not have people in the company who don't know about what's happening. Well, you can afford to have people who believe they know everything, but the biggest cognitive bias is that illusion of control and illusion of understanding. Therefore, it's important for the CISO to explain to the management what's happening. They got to have the courage to speak up, and they got to have the courage to talk to everybody else. I'm sorry, would you like to comment as well? Well, guys, before you start talking in public about this incident, you need to first learn how to talk about those incidents internally, and lots of companies don't do that. Well, take, for example, the previous year, and I'm talking, for example, example, about the experience of positive technologies. So, we have been reading in various channels belonging to the opponents, let's put it like this, about a particular company being hacked and everything being stolen. Then I call this particular company, and it turns out that maybe something has been hacked, but they don't know anything about it. And if something has in fact been hacked, it could be a subsidiary or a smaller branch, and they have this kind of culture where for so many years people have been beating up on the head for any failure. That's why they are only forthcoming with good news, and they keep everything else under the carpet. So our experts and experts of other companies who can do incident investigation or response, they're not even invited, and system administrators do their best to remove all the traces of the hack to make sure they're not punished. So what matters to me here is two things. One is to realize that you absolutely need to disclose it internally. Remember that the business leaders have many more tools at their disposal than you do. Secondly, it's very important to share with the professional community. For example, if one bank has been hacked, it doesn't take a Nobel Prize to realize that next day they will be attacking all the other banks using the same tool set. For the past year, I've been hoping, really, that companies would change their culture and would stop giving help to their security people for bad things happening, because, their CISOs were brought up in peaceful times, and we are now in times of war. We are at the very brink of a cyber war. So let's stimulate the right kind of dialogue. Now, you may remember the times when we had those big monitors. Well, back then, everybody lied and added like 1 inch. The actual inch was, the actual screen size was 13 inches, but they would say it's 14 inches. So all the vendors would inflate their monitor sizes. But how can we change the rules of the game now, do you think, so that people can actually approach their business leaders and courageously tell them that they have been hacked? And those who have not been hacked yet will be hacked soon. But how will the business leaders know that? In fact, now that you've mentioned information disclosure, I think it's extremely important for the leaders to know if they have security issues, and we naturally expect CISO or whoever to report to executives. Not doing it is out of question. What you do with this information going forward is another important discussion. These disclosures need to be driven by rational objectives. Do you want to do disclosure for the sake of disclosure? So, for example, if a particular public agency has been hacked or some other organization has been hacked, and they're the only party that has suffered, the citizens have not been impacted, their partners have not been impacted, it's a local, it's a contained case. Why would you want to take it public? I mean, you may want to share it with the public, with the professional community, but not with the general public. And when we are talking about the impact on other stakeholders, like citizens or business reputation, so if it has leaked, so to speak, already, then you absolutely need to explain what has happened. You need to state that you're already running your investigation. Concealing information, claiming that everything is fine, is meaningless, and it's actually puts you in a pretty bad light. Now, what you said previously about inflating the size of screens or downplaying the number of hacks, I don't know who does that. I can tell you that in the public sector, in various forums where we meet, I think that we have a very rational take on the current state, and we have a very open discussion of the current issues. So at that level, nobody's trying to pull wool on anybody's eyes. Guys, I have this question for you. Do you have a feeling for the percentage of executives of large corporations who actually know how protected or poorly protected they are. Say, let's take 100 largest companies. What would be your call? Maksud? At best, it's 1 in 5. That's 20%. Dennis? I think 10. 5 to 10%. Okay, that's 1 in 20. Alexei? 30% at most. I don't think anybody knows the answer to your question. Or nobody knows what's happening in the company. Like, how many executives know that fire safety issues exist in their companies or fire safety regulations are violated? I know little about fire safety. Well, I certainly don't lead a huge corporation, but I believe that executives only know, and in fact only should know, just as much as they need to know in order to make the right executive decisions. Do you really expect them to know how the toilets are cleaned, for example? Probably you don't. It's important for the executives to know what the global risks are. But when it comes to hacks, for example, and in fact, even port scan is considered an attack. Do you expect the CEO to know of every port scan? On the other hand, you cannot hide a fire, and toilets will take a much longer time to kill your organization than cyber attacks. That's my point exactly. Executives only need to know the stuff they need to know in order to make executive decisions. So much really depends on the culture of the organization and the culture of the leader. So if the leader is, kind of a down-to-earth manager who knows everything about his or her business. I know quite a lot of people like this. Roughly 30% of leaders I know fall into this category. The other 70% are top-level leaders. They do overall general management. They live up to the KPIs set by the board. And then they have C-level officers for all the other operations. So the higher you are positioned in this hierarchy, the less you will know of what's really happening in the field. Naturally, a lot depends on the size of the organization. The larger it is, the more thinly distributed the truth will be, so to speak. So you're right, but there is also a different truth as well. Now that you're talking about leaders, it makes me think of this old 90s joke about a company that failed because it could not fit the market. Well, we're at the very brink of cyber wars. Feels like it's starting already. I think that leaders who don't think enough about cybersecurity, they simply won't make it. So you can try to live by laws of peaceful time in times of war, but you will have to pay the price for that. I don't really think they stand much of a chance. Back when we discussed this draft law, we were thinking that once we appoint people responsible for cybersecurity, that would be so good, we would have a central responsibility. But paradoxically enough, the moment we established it, transparency seems to have gone down, because now many corporations have a single point of responsibility, and this person actually cannot recognize publicly that he or she is not doing a good job. So it's paradoxical in a way, because previously IT people would come running to you, telling you about the issues they have, but now you have CISOs who will tell, it's okay, the scale is not too bad, we will survive that. So that's an issue we absolutely need to address, and it does take a cultural change. So a person who is responsible for security and who can officially recognize that we've lost everything, well, that takes a lot of courage. Well, Decree 250 does spell out some pretty serious criminal liability. So I understand it takes a lot of courage to state, we've been hacked and I'm prepared to go to prison. So I do agree that we need to do a lot to change the culture. And the right culture should be different from the culture of silence we're seeing right now. No, I'm sorry. What was that about going to prison? People should not be put to prison for violating existing rules, but you can go to prison for actual damage being done. Now, in the roads, if you violate traffic rules and it results in damages, then there will be repercussions. Shouldn't the same logic apply here? I think that what you're talking about is a kind of a perverse understanding of responsibility and liability. Now, as a person who can go to jail or not, I can tell you, no, we're not going to send you to jail. Well, I can tell you the following. Indeed, we live in war times, and any officer, and CISO is an officer for sure, should realize that his or her responsibility has just been heightened. You know, in times of peace, there will be very few kind of reprimands available or punishments available for the officers, but in times of war, an officer is responsible for lives. He is also responsible for the equipment to, be up and running, and for enough ammo being given to his people, and for military objectives to be delivered. And he actually, he's responsible for it, lock, stock, and barrel. At least this is my personal choice. But that responsibility comes with authority and resources. And this makes me think of this old joke about firemen being responsible not for fires, but for fighting fires. Okay. You all are very loftily blazed leaders in your organizations, and you have learned about incidents in your organizations. Tell me what you feel when you learn about those incidents. Do you feel scared? Do you feel pain? Do you feel hurt? Do you wonder, should I tell others or not?
Yeah.
Me? Alexei, V-contacting is such a juicy is a bad word. Is such an attractive target, right? And V-contacting has been attacked. While talking about attacks, like of the past year, we have been able to thwart over 6.5 million attacks, targeting our infrastructure, our employees, and our users as well. And we've also averted roughly 300 internal incidents, which could have resulted in some pretty bad impact. And every time I see a situation where I start thinking, could be time for me to report to the management, the first thing I feel is a kind of dissatisfaction that we have not been able to identify it before and to prevent it. So the first thing I do is collect all the information available, like why did it happen, what did we do to prevent it, what did we do in order to contain the damage, and what are we going to do going forward in order to dramatically improve our defense.
Конечно, нужно честно.
And we gotta be honest and very open and very directly tell the management about what has happened. That's tough. Okay, but do you feel tempted not to do that? Do you tell yourself, well, maybe I won't do it this time, I'll only do it next time? You know what? I may have felt it earlier when I was a budding professional, but I think I've mastered it. I had good teachers, and they told me, if you feel you need to report, it's much better to report than to avoid it. Obviously, it's a bad idea to heap too much unnecessary information on the management, but all the important things absolutely need to be reported, and you shouldn't be afraid to assume responsibility. This is particularly important for CISOs, but it's actually a very important trait for any leader. Maksud, how many direct reports do you have, and what did you feel? Well, the first thing I felt was panic. I remember you called me. Isn't that normal? Like, I'm responsible for this infrastructure, I'm responsible for these systems. You know, we are responsible for digital transformation of the country, and cybersecurity has kept us behind in a way. You always need to strike the right balance between speed and security, and every time an incident happens, I'm thinking that this is going to push us backwards. This is going to slow down our development. I think now is the time to collect stones rather than to custom. And as regards your feelings about the team, I want to kill him. What are you asking me about? Okay, and when that moment passes, by the way, how long does that take for you? Well, I'm working on myself, Yuri. I have a psychologist, a psychoanalyst. You haven't fired a single person. No, I have. So he's not entirely sure what he means. Now, the difference between a peaceful time and time of war is that in peaceful times, it is so important to support the differences. In times of war, evolution stops. And we start appreciating in people not that they're different, but rather that they are similar. So in a sense, your company becomes a small army. It has its advantages because you can easily replace one person with another. But it obviously has a price. Because the division that you have in times of war, of these are the people you can rely on. You know, you invest more in their development, you kind of bring them up, you nurture them. And firing them may be a very dumb idea because it will significantly undermine the morale. We haven't done any firing. Well, there is some natural loss of people, but I think this is what's precious about our culture. We do place a lot of emphasis on learning and development. In fact, our development budget has been tripled, and we come up with all sorts of events to keep our team together. We believe that our team is essential, because otherwise we won't have anybody to fight with. I do believe we need sacrifices. You know, since February last year, we have been trying to explain to everyone that we live in times of new reality, and still people don't seem to be grasping it. You know, people on the front lines, you know, they can change relatively fast, but there are lots and lots of people who are totally relaxed. So we may need, sorry for saying that, some sacred sacrifices. Well, take VKontakte. VKontakte is such an attractive company, and I understand that Positive Technologies has assessed your defenses, and if Alexei doesn't have sacrifices like this, I'm afraid that after such statements, bad things always happen. Please do remember that Gosuslugi, e-government services, is not considered the best security service. And we're always, you know, not agitated, but we're in our tiptoes. I'm not saying that it frustrates the team. I'm not complaining of burnout, but certainly our people are working under higher workload now. How long do you sleep every night? I guess your budgets have gone up as well. They have, that's right. But do note that workload has increased, and our budget has increased not because vendors have increased prices. We are doing significantly more than before now. We are seeing many-fold increase in the amount of work we need to do in order to elevate ourselves into the next league, hence the increase in our budget. Now, as I asked you about sleep. Oh, right. What's sleep again? Can you give me a definition? I do sleep. Yes, I'm used to sleeping four and a half hours a day, 3 times a day. Is that what you mean?
Да, у
I
меня в
do
кабинете
have a
диванчик такой
sofa
стоит. Я
in my
все думаю,
office,
когда же наконец-то
and
я на
I
него лягу
keep
поспать.
wondering
И
if I
никогда не
am ever
удается. Но он
going to
есть. Я, по
use
крайней мере,
it.
прихожу, когда
But I
хожу
see
по
it
кабинету,
every
бегаю
day,
там очередной
and
этой
very
самой.
often I will
Ну,
be
ладно.
running
Что
around
касается
my
сна, 4,5
office.
часа
But
в
I
день я
do
сплю.
sleep
Это
4
правда,
hours
но
per
больше не
day.
удается.
I don't get to sleep
Что
more than
касается
that,
учений
really. Four and a
с
half at
позитивом.
best. As regards
Значит, вот здесь
trainings with
мы, смотрите,
positive
учение с
technologies,
позитивом
mind you,
это не
this is by
единственное мероприятие,
far
далеко
not
не единственное
the
мероприятие, которое
only
мы
kind
проводим в
of
лагере. У нас сложная
activity we
эшелонированная
run. We do
система
have a
защиты, прежде всего
multi-layered
управления уязвимостями.
system of
И
defenses.
киберучение с
We've got a
позитивом и
bug bounty
баг-баунти это
program,
вишенка на
which
торте.
is like a
Ну, то есть,
cherry on the pie.
если бы мы
If we
были не так уверены в себе,
were
в
not
своей
so sure
внутренней системе управления
in our
ценностями, мы бы на баг-баунти
internal
просто
system
тратили смешные
of
денег, и там 185 миллионов, которые мы заплатили
vulnerabilities
13 лет участия,
management,
отдали сразу.
then, of
Скажите,
course,
разбирайтесь, пожалуйста.
we wouldn't be dealing with that.
Наша система
Our
устроена так,
system
что
is built in such a way
внутреннее сканирование там
that the
инфраструктуры на
internal
предмет уязвимости
scanning of the
осуществляется
infrastructure
постоянно.
to find vulnerabilities happens all the time. Analysis of
У нас в
code
структуре
defects
team
happens all
команды
the
есть,
time.
которая тестит
We
нас
have the
постоянно.
internal
У нас
team
проходит по
that
60,
tests
по
us all the
70
time. We
пентестов
have
в
60,
неделю для
70
своих хакеров.
incidents
У нас
every day to
70%
review. We have
команде,
70%
наверное, 80%
people on our
команде
team, or maybe
ИТ, это
80% of our team.
безопасники. То есть это люди,
They're
которые
practical
инженеры
security
или хакеры.
experts.
Ну,
They're
если
either
говорить про хакеров, у
engineers
нас
or
порядка там
hackers.
20 человек
We
можно
have
назвать.
about 20
Такие жесткие
people
offensive.
whom we can
Вот. И,
call
соответственно,
like hard offenders.
внутренние пентесты, внешние
So
пентесты
in
по 60 штук, по
internal
70
pen
штук. У нас
tests
каждую
and
неделю
60
кто-то
pen
какая-то
tests
российская
every
пентестная
week,
компания внешне пентестит.
we have a Russian company that
Это
pen
тоже
tests us,
хорошая
and
история. То есть, за, не знаю, за вот последнее
bug
время, за
bounty is
последний
also
год
an interesting
мы
story, and it
около
also works
700
well.
отчетов уже
I think
обработали.
we had more than
За этот год,
700
за этот год
reports over
около
this
9
year,
миллионов
just for this year,
заплатили
and
следователям.
about
Это
9 million
процентов на 30
rubles we
больше, чем в
paid
прошлом
these
году
people.
за
It's
этот год.
30% more than we
И
did last year.
киберучение с позитивом — это вишенка на
And
торте.
the
То
cyber
есть мы,
exercise,
когда
it's
приглашаем
what we
позитив там
need
или
when
другие
we
компании
bring
провести
positive
киберучение, мы
technology
считаем,
to
что мы в
do
себе уже
the
уверены. И
cyber
мы
exercise.
договариваемся так, чтобы
We
в
think
игре,
that
в отличие от пентеста, мы видим
we have
пентеста,
some
мы знаем,
vulnerabilities,
что
so
он
we
делает
can
во
see
время
pen
пентеста.
test. We know what the pen test
Проходит
does. We
киберучение,
can
мы
see
противодействуем так,
what
как
we
мы
have there,
обычно
and we
это делаем.
have the cyber exercise. Then we do it as we usually do it.
Проблема в том, что когда мы получаем результаты,
The problem is, and when we get the results, results are
всегда
always better
внешние результаты, чем мы
external
знаем про
results
себя сами.
than
То есть
we
наш
know about
внутренний
ourselves.
red team
So
всегда
our
знает,
internal
как
red
нас
team
взломать самих лучше,
knows how
качественнее,
to
там,
hack us
эффективнее
better
и, значит,
and more effective
с большим результатом.
and with a better
Это
result.
проблема.
So
Почему?
that's a
Потому
problem
что,
because
вот все последние инциденты,
over
которые
the
я лично знаю, которые
all,
произошли за
all
последний
the
год,
recent
они
incidents that we had over the
были
last year,
достаточно длительные во времени.
they were
То есть
quite long in that
с момента
time.
проникновения в инфраструктуру и до момента
From the point of
выполнения
penetration to the
вредоносных действий
infrastructure
проходило очень
and
долгое время.
to start the malicious actions, it took
4-5
quite a bit of
месяцев,
time.
а то и
I
больше.
think
Есть
4 or
случаи,
5
когда
months.
по 1,5 года сидели в
I
инфраструктуре
even know
и
that
там
it took them 1 year and a
наблюдали.
half to sit in the
И самое
infrastructure and to
главное,
monitor that.
что причиной подавляющего
The most
большинства
important thing,
инцидентов
that the reason of
были не
many incidents
какие-то
was
использование
not
каких-то
Well, the
там
most important thing that
серьезных
overwhelming
инструментов,
majority
to
of
use some
incidents
serious
was not
instruments,
from like very serious
super
skills or
things.
very heavy techniques. The reason behind
The
the
reason of
incidents
many
would be
incidents,
just
it's
IT
banal
nonsense. IT
IT
disorder. I mean, you have the
chaos.
antivirus, but
There
you
is
do
an
not
antivirus.
you do
There
not
is
update it, you do not
operation
install
system.
patches, you do not have the second factor, your admin sheet is just sticking all over, you do not have any access and things like SDLC. You're talking about not being a tough of those guys, but anyway. What I'm trying to say that this is the case, and whenever we say that, you gotta do things, you gotta do them right now. Well, it's very simple. You guys have to roll up your sleeves. You have to make, put things in order in your database. You have to prioritize your events, your backlogs, and your product development. I mean, you have to slow down your operations for a month or two. Clients will stick with you. It's not a problem, but you have to deal. Yeah. How about the госуслуги or public services website? Are you prepared to limit your functionality for the sake of cybersec? It's a question for Maksud. Yeah, I will have to say that we have to reflect on that, and actually, in this past year, we have reconsidered many of our approaches. And how about the speed of development? Yeah, the speed of development kind of slowed down a little bit, and we had the previous concept like to be client-centered and to provide client all the data and to make it convenient and to make it fast so that the forms of applications, you could do it in one click. And now we're saying that no, we do not need like super data concentration. Let's not upload all the additional data. Let's build just kind of windows. Yes, it's going to take more time instead of sort of like keeping it on our side, but I guess it's like more systemic. Again, this is the event, and this is what will be the reason for reflection. Yeah, all in all, if we go back to our dialogues and do some incidents, what is a very serious incident in terms of like perception by a company's management? A real cyber incident and change in the environment would be the reason for transformation, and I believe that those incidents we've had so far in Russia and those, we've seen with our neighboring countries who are also in the cyber war state and they're being attacked, who is attacking us. And, well, it tells us that you cannot live, it's not like business as usual. Like, we thought that, okay, we have the InfoSec guys and they have to be given some responsibilities, but at the same time, whenever we talk about some problems, like why do we have incidents? Because you need to go faster, because we have the total mess in our IT, and you name it, there is a whole list. So my experience is saying that those companies who have the super priority for InfoSec, and they know what they're doing, and the role of InfoSec guy, it is not like to do the patch management and okay, I'm gonna just hire like 1,000 of IT guys and pen testers to raise the DLC, but it's about those guys who are able to use their power and influence within the company, but not like to be sort of like a top-down approach, but to explain their IT guys from their departments. Folks, the whole idea of your safety and security is in IT and development, because you get the bugs. You get the bugs because the programmers are making mistakes while writing code. And whenever those InfoSec officers were able to be a partner and to say, hey folks, let's slow down with our features, because if we're going to pursue features after the first incident, you guys are going to be like in a total mess. Yeah, like what is happening with the Russian taxi drivers when their GPS navigation is no longer active. So it could be that the role of CIS should be transformed, and maybe it has to be. Are you speaking about the CISO, or you're speaking about the level of top managers? Because you begin to define the other management. I mean, the role of the Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, is different, but only when something happened, you are a fall guy. What you're saying, Dennis, is basically, it's like a financial officer has to do this, and technology has to do that, and this has to be supported by the CEO or the board chair. The role of CISO is like, okay, we have some weird guys, weirdos, they're InfoSec, they're protecting. That means that they are sort of shifting responsibility. And speaking about all the companies and their top management, we're saying, folks, this is your responsibility, not this kind of geeky guy who is sitting in the corner and doing your InfoSec. Speaking about the CISO role of information and CISO's communication with the top management, yes, we've seen like a lot of problems. You cannot just sit down with the big boys at one table in the board of the company, but no one is going to communicate with the CISO officer unless the CISO officer has a real power in the company. You can get real power in the company. Number one, you take it away from somebody, and secondly, to receive it from somebody. If you'll try to take away this authority from somebody, you'll be pushed back. There'll be a pushback. How to get this kind of power and influence in the company? You should not be afraid to assume responsibility for any problems. You come over there, you identify a problem, and you say, hey, I am responsible for these and these problems. I know what to do about this, I have some experience, I have competences, and I need this, and this. So you get the power along with the responsibilities, as Maksuda was saying. And only then, when you assume responsibility for a problem, you are willing to work the problem. You begin to work the problem. And then you begin to talk with the top management of your company, and you have to sleep like 4 hours a day, 4 hours a night. Alexei, can you tell us, please, like when you came to VKontakte social network, what was your type of conversation with the owner, with the CEO? How did you guys, rub your shoulders and develop your conversation? How did you arrive to this kind of position in your company, which you have right now? Yeah, you're asking really, really tough questions. But anyway, before the VK, VKontakte, but VK, like a Russian social media VK, I used to work in Sber, in Severstal, and I was very, very lucky with the top management because Mr. Mordashov and Mr. Graf and Mr. Kiriyenko, they're all, like strong managers. They dive deep into the operations, not as good as I do, but still, they do a good job. And there are different methodology of working with the senior management of the company. Give us just a bullet points, give us the main points. Well, okay, number one is you have to understand that if your manager is like a very, very strong guy, well, you have to be able to provide a high quality outcome. And so this group of NPS, and if we will be able to solve the problems, it's a problem solving approach, number one. You have to look for a problem, you have to take responsibility. And as soon as we have a deal with the senior management that this will be the paradigm of doing our InfoSec, starting with the problem and working back from the problem. And so this is why, we're speaking about DevOps and firewall and all this kind of fashion buzzwords, or you're trying to avoid these words. No, I'm not trying to avoid the words. But since, Vladimir used to work in the Rostelecom, and, since you're asking, it's about the senior management. Have they been working in an IT company? We can speak the same language, but I'm trying to use the professional lingo, not so much. Yes, sometimes it is difficult because to be able to meet their expectations, I have to do a deep dive into operationals and then come back and then to transform it into the outcomes which I bring to the top brass of the company. Victor, can you just add something to our discussion, please, if you will? It looks like VK is our general partner. Oh, I mean, definitely. Yeah, definitely. We dived very deep in, how many hours you guys are sleeping and what are you eating and stuff like that. Anyway, I've lost track of my thought, what we began with, and we're discussing VKontakte and how to organize and information security and stuff like that. Anyway, I am convinced, and some of my colleagues, they can confirm to that, speaking about responsibility and going back to being involved as a senior management, your responsibility should come if we have any negative consequences, and secondly, what were the problems, what were the reasons for these negative consequences in a company? If the problem was like very simplistic passwords or any other issues which have been communicated to the company, but the employees, they were not careful about their passwords or stuff like that, and these, like IT guys in the company, they may be held responsible. We have it all over the house, like negligence. We have the widespread negligence across the Russian companies. Well, what I'm saying that we're in a cyber war, cyber conflict and stuff like that. Had we had any real information situation in our information space would feel differently. Yes, we have a very high intensity of our computer attacks by several orders of magnitude, and we can see the slush of attacks. But if we are in a war, why all the incidents, or most of the incidents which we're having today, they are happening because of this, like a plain negligence that the colleagues have been saying about. So it's about your attitude to information security. It's about one's attitude to cyber hygiene, and after people or a company have incident, they have a different perspective on the problem. So I believe that we should not lay it thick, so to say. But somebody said that we are going to, enter a cyber war. I've heard this like a year ago. All this like a narrative about the cyber war. It looks like we've been speaking about the cyber war. We are standing on the brink of the cyber war, and we're still waiting for that. When the special military operation began, we had like a one-off incident, and people were saying that this is one-off, and then we had like a total DDoS, and people were saying it's just a DDoS. Then we had like some kind of deep charges and bombs for 4 or 5 months. How many different other attacks? No, you're listening to wrong people. Listen to different people. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. How many attacks we've seen which have been like evolving? And then, in the matter of 8 months, we got this like hacks, we got these leaks. How can we be sure what will happen in a couple of months with us? To be able to say that we do not have escalation of these attacks. I have a question. Okay, let's run this, argument. Like, do you want to place your bet in this argument? It's going to be better, it's going to be worse, it's going to be the same. Now bet your money, bet your whatever you want to bet. Do you think it's going to be worse, it's going to be the same, it's going to be better in the future? Maksut, what do you always call on me, like to be the first guy to provide an answer? No, ask Vitaly, okay. Vitaly, you're the next one, okay, fine. Maksut is the ministry, and who am I? Well, anyway, sure. I believe, just be very brief, please. Okay, just one word. It's gonna be better, it's gonna be the same, or it's gonna be worse in the future? It's gonna be the same. Okay, that's good news. That's good news if it's gonna be the same as today. In terms of intensity of cyber attacks, I will agree both with the ministry and with the regulator. No, actually, I believe that things are going to be worse. Things are going to get worse. Again, looking back into history, it's better to live expecting things to get worse, expecting a storm coming on, instead of being like a calm and cool and relaxed. So in this sense, what I want to say that he can see the full picture, but we need some kind of mobilization happening. So I believe that we have to, do the scaremongering. I mean, speaking about the mobilization of resources, I'm speaking about the resource mobilization. So as for me, I'm saying, guys, we gotta get to things get much worse. We should not be relaxed. So you place your money in this bet, that it's going to get better. And this is your expectations, right? It is not only placing your money. You can bet something else. I don't know what to say to the ministry, except what if the federal ministry cannot play gamble. Yes, we have to get ready, folks, because this situation is going to be ever more dramatic. Ever more dramatic. Folks, I do not know why you're so optimistic, so to say, but it's not going to be better. Like, what is your bet? It's going to be the same, it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse. Looking at the escalation today, yes, we've had some hacks before, and then we had some more hacks in Roskomnadzor, and then we did some kind of investigation, and it looks like it is not a secret. It is not a secret, but to be able to do this kind of supply chain attacks, you have to use intelligence, you have to look for the different contractors, and it looks like systemic work. It is not just, like those guys from Ukraine who could be doing the DDoS attacks. Somebody's working systemically on us. How can it become better? Because if we can see systemic attacks from the other side, how long do you think this kind of attacks will happen, which may cause a really big damage from the A to Z, from beginning to end? How much time on average should go for the bad things to happen? So one kind of enthusiast guy who does not know much, but he wants to do things like, okay, he's finding a company somewhere in the Google, and they begin to analyze the contractors. They may spend about half a year, and they are going to make some mistake in the beginning of this process, like in building their DDoS attacks, but it's only half a year, and 4 or 5 months he'll be sitting within the organization, and he'll be preparing like within a month, crypto, looking for exploits, and trying to scan the perimeter of the company, and then for 4 months they'll be sitting within the company. Looking through all of the cases like a VK, we've seen that. It usually takes for attack to develop for 4 or 5 months, In the YouTube, I was watching that. They've been sitting in the YouTube within the company. I mean, speaking about the intruders, and it took them like 4 years, how things were working. Speaking about professionals, the cycle of an attack development would be like 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. What Vitaly was trying to say that yes, we're getting better, and of course the level of external aggression is growing. Yes, we are learning, we are getting better. So if attackers are becoming more sophisticated, but the system is reacting, the system is trying to defend itself, and our professionals are also learning. They get some practice, and like the colleagues, is now sleeping for 4 hours. He used to sleep like 18 hours, I guess, before this kind of cyber resistance. This system is reacting to external influences and attacks. And that means, will we be able to adapt ourselves? So I believe that if we take these 2 parameters, these 2 indicators, and speaking about better and worse, what does it mean? It's about terminology. But again, are we going to see some more difficult attacks, sophisticated attacks? Yes. Will we be able to more efficient in defending from these attacks? Yes. So maybe this gap will become more narrow. I mean, we're going to try just as better as they will try to attack us. No, I would like to disagree. There is no more complicated tactics. They're attacking us with the same kind of very stupid ways which we've seen 10 years ago. It's a one day vulnerability and passwords and stuff like that. So we came to a situation that the whole nature of the safety security is beyond InfoSec. If you guys will ever work as the CEO of a company, please take it. It's very good. Like I'm a hacker myself, and for me, all this like VPS and SPS and whatever, all this stuff, this was my natural language which I was trying to carry across the problems. But it does not work like that, because let's say the risk professionals come from a company, they say we have a fire safety, we have some fines that we have to pay. I do not care about this kind of language, and here's my CEO sitting in the company. Go to him and try to understand. You guys can calculate how many fines you have to pay, but when somebody's saying, hey, here in our office it looks like we can get like fire circuits and shortage and we can just burn down, I know it's a different conversation. So basically we have to speak the language. We have to speak the language of global risks, not speaking about vulnerabilities and passwords and things like that. Again, I feel a bit lost. I'm a little bit lost. You know what I'm trying to say, that unless we can see the complication of methods of intrusion into a system and hacking the system, but at the same time, situation is going to get worse, like you're saying. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. That means that our defense system is degrading. It's a great outcome of our discussion. I mean, what I'm trying to say that we have to admit that we are not evolving. All of us who are sitting here, we are not upgrading, we are degrading. Even if you're sleeping like 4 hours a day, it's a degradation. I think this idea that the industry is not catching up. It has to become reality today. No, it looks like I have to go to my psychic, Later on, it looks like the industry is not catching up. Friends, whenever we speak about the industry, we're not saying about one separate company which is building InfoSec. It's the whole industry building the products and those companies who are integrating these products and implementing them and using them. It's the whole industry of cybersec, whether it's successful or not successful. It's not up to it, up to the challenge. I know some companies who are up to the challenge. And one good thing is, yes, we do have success cases when companies are super protected in the whole countries, like the whole countries are trying to break in and intrude. And these guys are working much more dynamically because their kind of like a worst fair situation is the reality. They're living in this new reality. And we can still live in an illusion that things are gonna get better and stuff. Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, let's provide a little bit more optimism. Like Danny said, we have some companies who were supposed to be like broken into, breached, but this did not happen. We have movement of 69 project. It's a cyberbest are breaking each other until they will be able to protect to the point that they cannot be hacked. We have some companies who use the big premiums for bug bounty, and we do have some other companies which are planning to level to the public market. Open up to invite all the hackers and say, folks, if you will show us how you can break into and hack our company, we'll pay you a high premium. Actually, it's like a big public bug bounty. It took us a couple of years to understand what would be the major outcome of a cybersec. What is a good cybersec? What is a success in cybersec? But now, amid this war going on, like these guys are hacking us, and those guys cannot hack us. Can we, for ourselves, imagine such a situation that if, let's say that we do this kind of testing, internal testing, internal R&D, could we have more companies like that who have the public bug bounty? Or can we set an overall goal for this kind of company in organizations, have a certain percent of these companies who are able to pay the premiums for the public bug bounty? And would that be the good outcome of cybersec? It's something for you to think about. Well, what I want to say is, like, in any situation, it's about evolution. Like, you are either progressing or you are regressing. And despite the fact that I have a very dramatic perspective on this whole situation, I still believe that many of our companies seen some like very bad cases of other companies. They began to reinvent themselves. They sort of came to grasp with the severity of the situation, and some are only going to come to grasps with the reality. There is no other way. We're going to come out of this situation much stronger, much more protected, and with a different culture of the information security than before. And I think that means that we have a big mental and structural changes, when actually even the CEOs are concerned about InfoSec. It is not like you have your deputy InfoSec guy, but when the top management of the company like becoming nervous, they consider it as a part of the global risks. And I think I'm more optimistic about the future because our industry is growing, developing, and companies are increasing their revenue. It looks like things are getting better. It looks like we do have some structural changes. It's about the rate of these changes, pace of these changes. But can we set a goal like, okay, folks, you got to develop a strategy, like 2 years, how many companies like that we have? X% of company or organizations. Well, let's say that not from the position of just a separate company, but the whole government. Can you give them a challenge? Okay, folks, like 30% of the companies have to be super. What's your criteria? What do you want for them? Like, do you want them to do the bug bounty testing? You know, I'm trying to say that anyway, our colleagues, they have the good idea that all kind of practice, you know, all kind of pen testing, bug bounty stuff, all that is trying to evaluate efficiency of some kind of process. That is, if you do not have a process in your vulnerabilities management, if you don't have an infosec in your company, nothing will help you.
Они дадут в моменте средств, которые ты получишь, и не знаешь, что с ним будешь делать. Поэтому ставить надо себе тогда показатели какие-то комплексные. Мы говорили уже не раз там об оценке там зрелости компании с точки зрения информационной.
We spoke about it, about the maturity of the company, and this is what should be shown there. And include in this program the content that we need, and not just meeting the requirements. Well, that's a good conversation. Then macroeconomy, and we say that there is a company, and we can steal 300 million rubles, or we can show what the damage could be, and then the company will have to pay for it. And then you say, who can do that? So I pay 10 millions, 30 millions, and then here's a miracle. For 30 millions or 40 millions, you can find those people who can actually develop it. They bring 300 millions. And this is the economy, physics and chemistry, and so we have another thing. And we have cyber war, and so if I make a point that I want these 300 millions to be stolen, I can say, so I pay the hackers 30 millions, and if they can show it to me, then of course I will be in the line of those victims. Then people will be making money off. So because the number and the quality of hackers over the few years, over the last 3 years, they're dramatically high. So in the economy here, it's pretty simple. See, I'm not denying it. I'm not denying the usefulness of this process. But I'm saying that the methods of tackling those problems should be inbuilt in the processes. Your example, let me split it. Let me break it down. So you show how 300 millions could be stolen. So then, let's assume that the CEO of the company says, so they covered the weak spots in the system. So what we can see in some of the recommendations in the reports from the companies that actually review the security of the company, they say, here's vulnerability, here is the weakness, so here you need to change the passwords, so here we need to install a new software, and sometime after that, and the system is working, and the services are developing, things are changing, so you'll get the same result if you don't have well-built processes in managing security. That's why you have all these security divisions and those security deputies. It's not just for them to carry the responsibility. This is done so that they could build these processes. Well, it's even worse. Our colleagues were talking about this. So the company is supposed to change its culture. So you're not going to get the results even if the security people will be making those patches, and they need the IT people to do this. So the whole city will be dead and buried because in this pile of so many things. Yes, exactly. That's why the process should be built within all those divisions. There are many people who should be working on it. So we need to work on the methodology. And of course, we need to look what's going on through practical methods, bug bounties, exercises, and many other things, depending on the maturity of the organization. But it should be focused on improving the processes. So, Vitaly, I have a serious question to you. So we are not general sponsors here either, you know. We just love you. So is Stack ready to include this whole list of requirements in the list? They're working with vulnerabilities, then work with management, and then changing the culture of the company, and telling those guys, and after you do all these things, so you will achieve the results, not before that. So we are working on it. Yesterday, our CEO signed the document how to to organize management of vulnerabilities. And yes, tomorrow it will be published. And then, of course, we understand it, and we will adjust ourselves working in that direction. Okay, thank you. But we need help of such companies as Positive Technologies and VKontakte company and other leaders in the market. My request to the audience, so please raise your hands, who is ready to help Vitaly in this quest, in this mission. So many people, but not too many. So could have been more. I thought there could be more. So, but see here we have this video reconnaissance, video surveillance. So, joining your discussion, I would like to say this. I see quite a big issue of lacking a proper definition of the issue of the top management. Yes, I understand that the industry knows how to tackle the problems that exist. We have highly qualified individuals in our industry, but this culture that should be built to escalate this news to the management. The question is how to have this objective review and make the management participate in this process. There is a great thing here. Maksud came here from the exercise grounds. He said to us, so you take one of the sections, go to Nizhny Novgorod and show them what's going on here, and they will understand. Will they? Yeah. I think both of you are right. Bug bounty is a chance to quickly show management how vulnerable the system is. So they'll have like a cold shower. And then, of course, they need to build the processes, so one can't work without the other. Many of us are under the illusion that everything is good, but bug bounty shows us that it's not, and it's a great story. But to live with bug bounty only, you can't. Okay, friends, just another question. Together with Maksud, we're discussing this, how to switch to this model for those who consume the security, infosecurity service, and they order it from those who already have the result. Maybe it can be on the bug bounty level and like a final result that would be given to the user. And it could be shown to those who can build their infosecurity. So there is Rostelecom and Gostech. There are many organizations who can say, we can deliver you a service. And they're talking about the information technology service that has a security component in it. Can they take this guarantee on? Could you talk about that? So what could happen?
Для меня результат тестирования госуслуг показал, что
testing Gosuslуги website, I have to say that there is another dimension for cybersecurity. And there is some cybersecurity that can be economically calculated. In other words, so we are paying for a found vulnerability. So the high security is determined by the amount that could be paid those who can hack. So 50 million for Gosuslуги service. This is that is a target audience for us. I agree with Vitaly here. There will be fines for the data leakage, but we shouldn't be fining them. We should be helping them with the infosecurity, and in this sense, the fine is much lower if the incident comes. If the company company was taking additional efforts to provide to ensure the information security for the company. So the question is how to make this additional security level and how to deliver this additional security services for the company. And if the incident happens, so the company will pay less fine than it would have been, it could have been if it didn't do anything about cybersecurity. There will be a big discussion, and I think this year we need to formulate the requirements of high cybersecurity, and the companies will invest in the infrastructure. And I have to say that here there are some economic incentives. Well, here's pretty okay business approach. If somebody is giving me services, security services, and somebody is going to find me, and they will find me if there will be data leakage, and if some other vendor comes to me and says, so I'm paying these fines for you because I'm sure about the high quality product I'm giving to you. Well, see, there are many potential risks, their liability, insurance, and many other things. So you see that there is quite a good prospect in that. But I see there is a model when the regulator comes up with requirements and the company has to report about them. So the company has to have more tools and many services and more incentives to actually bring these services on. On the one hand, we expect a better understanding of the management of this problem, but at the same time, this state will be fining the companies if there will be data leakage, and I think there will be a high economic consequences imposed on the company if they're not investing in the security. So do you agree that the regulator supports this approach? Yes, in general, we do support this approach. But if, since the question was how to get practical results from the service, I think we can't avoid the fact that the people who order this service should be highly qualified, because people used to simplifying things, and especially in the public sector, those who are responsible for security, it's like they have to make a security agreement based on the 44 Act. There was a number of events that actually brought us in this situation, and let's, leave the story behind that aside. But those those specialists, security specialists, cybersecurity specialists, their qualification should be high, and then they will be able to properly define the issue and the task. But if they don't understand it, they will be talking different language. They will say the company, so do it in such a way that everything is covered. And they'll bring this guy just, some sort of like blanket service and just kind of pay the money for it. So if you're unable to accept the service, understanding what the service does, so obviously you're not going to get what you want. The last question then. So, friends, sort of a message for all of us, the industry to us, so we spoke about the issues we have. We spoke about these positive dynamics that we may have. For 1 minute, could you just formulate a message for people? So what should we remember? What should we do? How should we be? So just a couple of words. So an important message for the industry. Let's not talk about making goals, setting goals. What I want to say that I'm very proud how great our industry is and how the company help, and how they work. And I think we have very decent guys in the industry and the companies, and it would be great if the whole thing will be developing. And I would say it's very cool that we have this industry, and probably we didn't over-regulate it. it wasn't intruded, and that's why we have all these operations. That's the most important thing. And together with you, with some effort, we will be able to negotiate all these challenges. And so thank you very much. Thank you, Maksud.
От лица индустрии, наверное, точно скажу спасибо тебе
On
большое.
behalf of the industry, I would like to say that thank you that we have you, because we never felt such support of the industry and such involvement in the industry. So thank you very much. So then we can continue, and we have a great regulator, by the way.
Слушай, ну, если так кратко, да, то у меня посыл, наверное,
In brief,
вот отрасли именно
my message would be
ребят, давайте
for
выходите из
cybersecurity
кокона,
industry.
давайте
So
научимся
get out of your
смотреть на себя
capsule,
глазами
from
хакера,
your
давайте
cocoon,
сами станем
look at yourself
немножечко хакерами,
with the
потому
eyes
что
of
в
hacker,
текущих условиях это
become
необходимо
a hacker
понимать,
in
как
some
ваша
way,
компания
because in the
будет
current,
ломаться
under the
извне,
current
и как бы
conditions,
вы
it's
сами
important you
ломали,
need to
если бы
understand
атаковали
how your
ее
company
извне.
can be
Вот
hacked
даже у ребят
from the
из
outside and
результатов
how
порядка
you would
20
hack your
хакеров
company
для
from
этого
the
есть,
outside.
для
So
того, чтобы
those guys,
все-таки
they
войти
have
немножечко из
20
своих функций.
hackers to actually
И
see what's
давайте
going on. So
посмотрим
you need
на
to see it.
себя,
And let's
на свою
look at
роль, на свою роль
ourselves, at our
ЦИСа
role,
сверху.
at
Вот
our
если бы вы были генеральным директором, чего бы на самом деле хотели бы по
CIS, and if you were
кибербезопасности
a
и
general director,
киберзащищенности?
so what would you want to do if you were CEO? Myself, as the client, I formulated 3 messages. I'll try to make it brief. First one, real life shows us that infosecurity consulting doesn't exist. And now, many things are happening around this idea that everybody wants to be a hacker, and they want to be incident responders or analysts. Guys, it doesn't work. I don't want to buy a piece from the general control system. I want to pay for a particular service for a particular result. I don't want to buy a product separately from everything that can be included in this. If we don't pay enough attention to this, they pay a lot of attention to practical security, and it's kind of vague term. For me, the practical security is a system that is built in such a way that allows me to achieve such cyber sustainability that they've been talking back in 2008, and everybody kind of forgot about what was said back then. So I want to buy a system, not a product. About the product. What we know from real life, that many Russian vendors, they come and show us a product and they say, we know how it should be done. So you buy it, you put it there, and you work according to what we have, to our templates. I want to be in the center as a client, and I want the whole thing to be built around me, the whole product system. Otherwise, I'll have to break all the processes I have within the company. And the third one, what I would like to say to our colleagues, guys, don't forget that our strength is in unity.
Вот эта ситуация, когда произошедшая буквально за эти 1,5 года, она радикально изменила отрасль.
The situation that happened over the last year and a half, it changed the industry in terms of collaboration. Now I can say I can find any security specialist very quickly. Before, it took me a while to do that. So, my calling is, so let's keep this ecosystem going. Let's support it. Let's sustain it. Let's maintain it. And share our experience. It's very important for all of us. And I would agree with my colleagues. It's going to be the same or even worse than it is today.
Ну, я бы хотел бы сначала первое присоединиться к словам Максута
First of all,
Игоревича.
I would like to
Как бы такая оценка.
agree with the words that Maksud said. So it's proper evaluation of what we have. So if we didn't have the system and the people that we have today in the audience, that the consequences could have been even worse, much worse.
Все-таки тоже пожелать коллегам
And I also would like to
и
say
специалистам, которые здесь вот присутствуют на этом
and
мероприятии,
wish all the
не
colleagues
падать
that are
духом, не
here
терять
today,
бдительности
so
и не
please
опускать руки.
Stay tuned.
Такое желание, я знаю, возникает,
Cheer
особенно
up.
чем дольше длится такое
And
напряженное
don't get
состояние.
depressed.
И вот
And it might happen
деградация
because the
системы,
longer
она во
we stay in
многом как бы
this
в этом. То есть
tense
когда было
situation,
начало,
and
был такой
degradation of the system may be
всплеск,
happening.
там,
When the beginning
значит,
was
все.
beginning
Потом
of the
мы видим о
industry, it
том,
was such a
что любой человек, он адаптируется к ситуации.
we're kind of
Ну,
on the top of the wave,
начинается
and
как бы
people
более
kind of adapt to the
упрощенное,
situation, and
даже
then
у руководителей и просто специалистов. Там
the wave
где-то
kind of
не
goes
обратить
down.
внимание, где-то
People
замолчать.
become more
Поэтому я
complacent.
желаю всем не
They
терять
don't
бдительность,
as
не падать
focused, so that's
духом,
why be vigilant.
и
Don't
также,
lose your
а
spirits.
лучше с большей эффективностью
Stay
решать те
strong.
задачи, те
Be more
функции,
effective
которые
working on
здесь
the
возложены и которые
targets
решают
and the
специалистами.
functions
Спасибо.
that we need and that help us to move forward. Thank you.
Спасибо, Виталий Сергеевич. Ну, я честно прям
Thank you,
не
Vitaly.
слукавлю. Я точно знаю, что
And
вся
honestly
индустрия,
speaking,
вот к тому,
I
что
know
вы делаете,
that the
вещи,
whole
Виталий Сергеевич,
industry,
относится с
and
большим
personally what you
уважением.
do,
На
the
протяжении
whole
многих
industry
лет
respects what
вы
you do.
призываете
Over the many years,
коллаборации. Давайте
you
вместе
all the
делать
time
ту
say,
регуляторку, которая нам
collaborate,
нужна.
let's do the
И
regulations
я
that
не
you
знаю, я
need.
поражаюсь тому упорству
And I'm
и
actually
той целеустремленности, с
astonished
которой вы,
by the
будучи
persistence
все-таки представителем
that you
государственной
have
структуры,
and
нацелены на
being the
результат.
representative
И
of
я
the
точно говорю
state
спасибо большое от всей индустрии лично вам.
agency
Спасибо большое.
that you, thank you for what you do. Thank you very much for what you do.
Друзья, мне кажется, было сказано очень много хороших
Guys,
слов.
I
Я
think
присоединяюсь
many
лично
good
к
words
словам
were
о
said,
партнерстве,
and I
кооперации.
personally
Только
join
вместе,
all these
ну,
words
как бы
about
это банально не
cooperation and
звучало,
partnership,
только
and we
вместе
can
можно найти тот
move
путь, в
forward
котором
only
мы
together,
измерим,
and we can
станем лучше,
find
и не дай
the
бог,
way
в
that
какие
we're going to be better,
перетурбации, все-таки мы
and whatever happens ahead of
будем
us,
выглядеть достойно. У нас
we
все для этого
will
есть.
be
Спасибо, друзья,
working
большое.
properly.